Up until the dawn of the 21st century, 15 years ago, science did not know that 95% of reality existed. It suddenly perceived dark matter and dark energy. The day before, 95% of reality did not exist. Atheism demands that the existence of God be proven using scientific measurement under academic authority. You cannot prove what doesn't exist. It has been very effective in stripping religion of any authority over what reality actually is. Apply some simple psychology, and the individual's experience can simply be described as a projection of her imagination. She has no authority, because no scientific authority has experienced the same thing. Curiously, the medieval church, 500 years ago, used this method to shut down the astronomer named Copernicus. Copernicus observed that the earth was not the center of the universe. Copernicus repeatedly experienced this observation and verified it mathematically, coming up with the same conclusion over and over and over again every time. The earth was not the center of the universe. But to the church, Copernicus had no authority. The greatest minds in Western history, going back to the ancient Greek philosophers, stated that the earth was the center of creation. Both the enormous church mind and the pagan authorities agreed. Who was this silly man to argue against the greatest minds in Western history? If it were true, why wouldn't the authorities know? Copernicus chose to trust his own experience over the authority of the institution that everyone submitted to. He was therefore persecuted for his error. But observation, rational mathematical equations, and repeated experience showed him he was right and those in power were wrong. But no one else had Copernicus' experience, and without that experience they couldn't believe him. Everyone depended upon the church to tell them what reality was, and if you never experience something outside of the church's reality, you can't believe it. The church controlled people's minds. This is called solipsism. Nothing exists outside of one's own experience, even if it's described to you. If you have never experienced it personally, it doesn't exist. Ironically, Copernicus experienced something personally, and it did exist. It was true. But people believed what their institution told them was true, even though they hadn't experienced it themselves. They would believe the church, but Christians wouldn't believe Copernicus. They had only experienced the church. Fast forward to today, and the opposite is true. God doesn't exist. God is outside of people's experience. Business, science, culture is our environment in the cities and universities, and they teach our minds how to perceive reality, limits on what reality is allowed to be. Starting in kindergarten, just like the church used to, creating the box of how people experience reality in their minds and emotions. Science tells us that reality is just inert matter, lifeless molecules and energy we can do with what we want. The success of business, science, and education conditioned us to see reality their way. Humans are life. Everything else is an object we control. Look what we can do. What did the church do? What did God do? Compared to science, God is irrelevant. God does not exist. God is powerless. Take your pick. Even a minister will go to the doctor over trusting just prayer. Business and science is powerful and can give us what we want. Modern, civilized, evolved humans gravitate to where the power is and receive the benefits from that power in exchange for money. Knowledge is power, and knowledge is now more often called technology. How to manipulate invisible reality using science and business. Using invisible numbers, just symbols in our bank accounts, and scientific equations, and tools to make things, humans give authority to techno-knowledge. That is reality. It works. It's our survival system now. Does God exist? Well, if you have experienced God, you know. If you haven't, you don't know. The church will tell people to just believe and have faith. But if you have experienced God, you don't believe or have faith. You know, just like Copernicus. Those experiences trump both science and religion. If you have only one experience of God, well, you're vulnerable to psychology, scientific atheists, and ministers. And they may get your experience under their control, so it fits their own narrative, so they feel safe against your strange, threatening experience. However, if you have had repeated experiences of God over and over again, the authorities of those who tell you what reality is lose their power. They simply don't matter. They don't know. They only have excuses and reasons, hiding the fact that they don't know. If you have repeatedly had contact with God, or observed events happen against all the rules of science and religion, you wonder what's up. Why don't they know? Who taught you what reality is, in the first place, only to find out it was a half-truth? It was wrong. God does exist. Reality is not what they taught you in kindergarten or grad school. Who is God? Classic Christianity describes God as a mind, like we have, that can control reality, like our invisible minds can, using knowledge. It's just a matter of scale. Liberal Christianity rejects that God has a specific consciousness, is a person, with a will of God's own. Liberal Christianity is slowly inching towards recognizing creation as God's body, however. It is not quite there yet, because the Church historically demonized creation as not perfect, unlike God. So creation needs a lot of therapy and rehabilitation in religion. For now, liberal theology joins with the green movement and business marketing to declare that material reality is good. Humans are also good, after 2,000 years of being told humans are absolute corruption. And the human emotion called love best describes all reality, a unified theory. For liberals, God does not have a specific consciousness. God as creation is like a woman's body that creates life, but whose body has a mind of its own, doing what it wants, subject to biology, hormones, emotions, growths and transformations, all on its own. A woman's body has its own natural laws on autopilot that a woman's mind struggles to have any control over. As she gets pregnant, creates babies within her body automatically, without a thought from her mind. Then her body changes in shape and ages, becomes sterile, her body having quite the mind all on its own, doing things without the woman's permission. Just like creation, nature, and the universe, it's quite the drama. So Christianity is currently divided into two camps. Classic Christians know that God has a specific consciousness, a will, is a person. And postmodern Christians believe God is a body, and like a woman's body has a mind of its own, with all its parts doing their own thing. And it needs to behave, but there is no overall mind to make it behave. 2 billion Christians have to make God's body behave all on their own. In effect, between classic Christianity and the postmodern one, God is either a head without a body, or a body without a head. It is a curious dilemma. Does God exist? It depends on one's experience of God. Rare in these waning days of Christianity are those who can bring the two together, that God has a mind and a body, one, and we are part of that body. Every part of the creation body is like a cell. A liver cell does what it does, like having a mind of its own, totally oblivious that a heart or thyroid cell even exists. And most liver cells haven't a clue that there is a larger body, much less that there is a mind in control of that whole body. God is just like us, an invisible consciousness or mind, and a body. It's not rocket science, but unless one has had repeated experience with these two realities as one, it's hard to believe. But the only difference between God and humans is that humans cannot put their mind into a sick liver cell and change it at will. God can. But for the most part, God is like ourselves, letting our bodies do their thing automatically, each cell with a mind of its own, interacting with the cells around it, not realizing the existence of other organs, the whole body, or the overall mind, much less their impact on the cell's little liver world. It is not rocket science for those who have had repeated experience of God, either as option 1, 2, or 3. But for those who haven't, God simply cannot exist. Copernicus trusted his experience over the great minds of history, and people who know God simply do the same, despite what religion and society tells them. They just keep quiet. They know what happened to Copernicus when he spoke up.